Hi, beautiful people. I seriously don't know how I'm going to do this in 5 minutes. I'm going to try my best. Okay, this is Thomas Henry Huxley. He was born in 1825 and he died in 1895 of a heart attack. He was a naturalist. Today we would call him a biologist. He came from a poor working class family that was described as failing, and because of this reason, he was sent off when he was 13. And he worked as a trainee doctor and probably saw a lot of things that he shouldn't have seen as a 13-year-old. He ends up on the Rattlesnake, which is this ship that goes down to the Great Barrier Reef, and he meets his future wife in Sydney, Australia, and he goes through bouts of depression, and he realizes that he's a naturalist and not a surgeon, and he's there for many years on this journey, and he ends up sending the papers back to the Royal Society and making a name for himself and earning himself a fellowship there in 1851. He meets Charles Darwin and they end up having a relationship together because after Thomas Huxley marries Henrietta, they also have 8 kids, but his first son dies at the age of 4 and he's very troubled by this. Like he really would have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And Charles Darwin also lost children, and so they connect on this in a very intimate way outside of what like Victorian stereotypes of men would be described as. They wrote to each other. And so Thomas Huxley becomes Charles Darwin's bulldog because he takes the theory of evolution and he defends it publicly from attacks from the Church of England. And so Thomas Huxley, he was a writer, but he was also a lecturer and a debater, and he used his skill as an orator to communicate science, which was something that kind of like formed this bridge between academics and the working man so that they could be a part of the conversation too. Like that was important to him and probably comes from his background. And he paved the way for his grandchildren. This is Julian, who is also a famous writer and a scientist, and he's also the grandfather of Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, so science fiction. Pretty cool. So all of this impacted him as a writer, and his depression, his brilliance, his love of his children. And while I was making this zine, the inspiration for me was from the early 19th century, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And I really wanted to kind of use graphics that were showing dissection and parts of the body and apply those to things that were currently happening. And just kind of making a nod to Thomas Huxley as a kid, the stuff that he may have witnessed. But also just keeping it kind of gothic and beautiful along with that kind of severe black and white image. Thomas Huxley also had the idea of breaking apart this graphic on the left and making man part of animals instead of superior to. Here's just this funny graphic, the ascension of man, which we still get wrong today. It wasn't meant to be progress. It was just meant to be a comparative study. But these are some scientists that got us up to natural selection and theory of evolution. And it was finally Thomas Huxley who was like, hey, everybody, people are animals. Some of his great works that he made, some of his writings and lectures, was the debate in 1860 with Wilberforce, which was like the Church of England. And he also wrote Man's Place in Nature, which compared primates' brains to human brains and showed how they were similar. And then in 1893, he wrote The Evolution in Ethics, which is still important today because we misinterpret Darwin's theory of evolution and try to apply it to civilizations, and it shouldn't be used that way. Here's my works cited, and here's that comparison. This is actually a gibbous monkey on the left, but he just made it bigger so he could compare it easier. And at a glance, some pretty good stuff here. Thomas Huxley also formed the X Club, which was like scientists who decided that they were not going to acquiesce to the Church of England, and they weren't going to use creationism. They were going to use the scientific method, which is pretty badass. So some of my questions are, why did Thomas Huxley identify as an agnostic? If you look back through my zine, you can answer this question. He had a response, which was pretty poignant. Number 2, what early 19th century novel served as inspiration for my zine? And number 3, where do science and religion still conflict today? And I have a lot to say about that. I wish we were in a classroom together, but what can you do? All right, bye.